welcome to the Press Y podcast, episode 19.8, Final Redux and Knuckles, as Emerson kindly added. As always, I'm your host, one of your hosts, Gunnar. With me is the lovely Emerson.
Hello, as always, I am your host, your lovely host, Emerson. I'm here with your other host, your lovely host, Gunnar.
Yeah. And so here on the Press Y podcast, we discuss gaming news as well as do some analysis on the gaming industry and business and all that fun stuff. And this week we got plenty of stories for you. Sorry we haven't been posting, but we've both been busy boys with the break. I've had some family unfortunate stuff back home over the breaks. I've had to take care of some family members, which has sucked. And Emerson has been busy as well, doing his busy things like playing Xenoblade.
Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicle Cross. I finished it though, 52 hours. But yeah, I'm traveling, school, and now the flu, so it's gonna be fun. But I'm back, so bear with me. I'm gonna try not to sneeze on my mic.
Oh no! Please sneeze on your mic.
Over your beautiful mic you lent me.
Yes. But regardless, now that we're back at school, back at university, we're going to hop back onto our consistent schedule now that we have consistent workloads and a predictable schedule.
Speak for yourself. I'm in middle school still. I'm never leaving.
Yeah. You just stuck there eternally. All right. Well, speaking of eternal, this intro is getting very, very long. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Do it.
Dude, I thought you were going into the Doom Eternal. Like, speaking of Eternal, I was waiting for that.
And I thought about the transition. I literally thought about the transition, and then I looked at I looked at our list of news stories. I'm like, I'm not going to find that. Anyway, the first story for this week, Emerson, you want to lead us off?
Okay, yeah. So over our break, both the PS5 logo was announced and the Xbox Series X was revealed. So the PS5 logo was dropped at CES, and as you would expect, it is a PS5 with the exact same font that we know and love.
Ooh.
And the Series X was revealed at the Game Awards with an actual picture of the console, which looks more like a gaming PC. With basically, it's a gaming PC, but it's a cube rather than a rectangle. That'll be neat, but I think we've had some specs for the Series X come out. The PS5 is still no specs are out there yet, although we did get a PS5, or the DualShock 5 name was officially released. As we would expect, it is the DualShock 5. And I'm kind of chill with this. I'm not like too hyped for either. I'll wait until there's more news on it, and then that's kind of it for me. I'm complacent with knowing a little bit.
Yeah, same here. It's also important to mention that you mentioned the power specs. There seems to be some legitimate and thoroughly checked out benchmarks on, I believe it was Geekbench, for the supposed AMD processors in both the PS5 and the Xbox One or Xbox Series X. And it shows about a 3 teraflop power difference between the two, supposing that these genuinely are the actual processor specs. And here on the Press Y podcast, we're not huge on rumors, which we're going to talk about later, but this was pretty thoroughly vetted by a couple of different news sites as well as through Digital Foundry, and they don't typically report on with legitimacy, at least, on these kinds of rumors. So, or they do report with legitimacy on these types of rumors, rather. I gotta correct myself there. So that'll be interesting to see. And Sony, you look at the PS4 this generation, and even though it is more powerful than the Xbox One, at least just speaking purely on the base consoles, still the PS4 does things that you wouldn't think are possible. Like you look at Horizon Zero Dawn, like Uncharted 4, all of those games look just so good. And Sony just has so much money going towards its first party or second party developers. And they're just able to push the hardware just to crazy places. So I don't think that this power difference is that big of a deal. But
one last note on the topic is that Sony did say their upcoming 4K and 8K screens are going to be made with the PS5 in mind. So that's good. I think we kind of figured they'd be able to handle it, but it's kind of good to know that they're kind of combining their hardware and their monitors and TVs, and then their consoles are being made with each other in mind. But I didn't think that'd be an issue. It's kind of a fun little fact.
That's okay. I didn't actually see that. That's very interesting. And I don't know if you know about this, but big TV manufacturers like Samsung and LG and all of them, they're finally starting to actually pay attention to the gaming market. For a long time we've had low latency modes, and there's even like an auto detect low latency feature in a lot of like modern TVs these days, where the option will automatically switch on. So companies, I mean, they know that people are using their TVs to play Xbox and PlayStation. Well, now you're seeing companies like Samsung who are, through software updates, supporting higher refresh rates for consoles and PCs that are plugged into the TVs. So right now, I believe the Xbox One X is the only console with 120 hertz support. Even though I think it just extends to the UI. I don't even know if it goes into actual games, but now PCs can play at 120 hertz on some Samsung TVs. But one of the focuses on next generation outside of 4K and unfortunately 8K is higher refresh rates, which I think is a really positive thing for the industry. People are barely hitting 60 FPS now, but the ambition is 120 FPS. So if Sony's making their TVs with the PS5 in mind, it's likely we might see some 120 FPS support, which would be really nice because it would provide a very fluid experience for people on console. Because 120 hertz on PC is already super nice with the mouse and keyboard, but man, on console that'd be great.
That's awesome. And speaking of Hertz, well, Sony is skipping E3 again, and that does kind of hurt. But I think we all knew that that was kind of the way to go, given that going to E3 at all was a very expensive endeavor for a company. And as we saw this year, especially with the Mario picture on him at the beach that went viral from the Nintendo put on Twitter, anything online can go viral. And having it at E3, though it may be this huge reveal that is hyped at the time, ultimately won't make the reveal any bigger than if it was just put out online on YouTube or Twitter. So Sony's skipping E3 again for their own events, for their own state of plays, for all their own stuff, saves them money, and also doesn't hurt them at all in terms of their reach. It's not a surprise that they did this last year, but I mean, I do love the whole E3 event, but Sony missing out, it's on them, and I can't fault them for that because they're saving so much money doing this, and there's honestly, they can do their own thing anytime they want to, and this really isn't something that they need to do.
I think we're seeing with this, I think we're seeing a big shift in how the big companies of the industry are going to start, distributing news about their products. So, we've seen Nintendo for how, like, is it 3 or 4 years now, just outright doing a Nintendo Direct for E3, and then having like space on the showroom floor just for people to actually like play the games that they announced during the Direct. But Xbox is really the only only people right now that are actually going up on stage and having a representative from the company talk about like the games and the console or whatever for this year. And
Don't
so I
forget
think,
Bethesda. Bethesda's,
oh yeah,
they're there.
they are there. So is Square Enix. But I think there's two things here. I think we're going to see E3 either become a very small event, and so we'll have more developers and publishers come to it, rather than just Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft and all those big companies announcing all of their stuff at E3. I think we'd see maybe smaller people, or it just dies just altogether. So E3 doesn't have a great reputation, at least recently, with leaking out all the journalists and media's contact information, basically doxing everybody on accident. And it seems more cost effective and a better strategy whenever you can just, spend a couple $1,000s on putting, that's a bit of an exaggerate or a bit of a understatement, but spending a couple $1,000s on putting a video together, showcasing all your new games and building up hype. I mean, everyone looks forward to Nintendo Directs. People sort of look forward to State of Plays, but Sony could make it to where people are just as hyped for those as people are for Nintendo Directs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's on them. They've had some really underwhelming State of Plays so far.
Yeah,
If you
it
don't have
really
big
is on
news,
them.
don't bother. But so I think they've done that a lot for like, here's one game with a whole bunch preceding that's been disappointing, or at least not worthy of a State of Play. And so that's kind of on them. Although, yeah, if they get to the direct style where it's more infrequent, but it's just a lot of big stuff, endless stuff woven together rather than a build up to one reveal, I think they have a real winner on their hands.
Yeah, I think so as well, and I think Microsoft will end up. Honestly, I think Nintendo and Microsoft will end up skipping E3 and pursuing just a full digital strategy as far and doing events all across the country. Plus, it makes your products more accessible because if you're doing an event in all 50 states, or even just 30 or 20 of 50 states, then more people are going to get the chance to play all your new announcements and all your new games and stuff rather than the lucky few who get to fly out to LA or wherever E3 is held every year. So I think that this is a pretty big industry shift. Not having a true expo for the industry. I think we'll have smaller stuff continually and always, but it's an interesting move from Sony.
For
Albeit
sure.
repetitive move.
Speaking
Go
of
ahead.
smaller stuff continuously being distributed, we have the Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC has been announced. This is the first Pokemon game to have DLC.
Oh boy! Oh
And it
boy!
sure won't be the last.
Oh
So
oh boy!
rather,
Tell me about it.
rather than a third game being announced, like a Diamond Pearl and then a Platinum, which is both games combined, also then having the complete version, I guess, or a sequel like Black 2, White 2, they're going to continue to support the game with DLC. The first wave is coming out June 2020 called Isle of Armor for a $30 expansion pass, and that also gives you the access to the fall 2020, the Crown Tundra. Turns out all the Pokemon that it didn't have time to develop for, to make animations for, that are actually already in the game, but their sprites are there, their moves are there. Turns out that they're going to be unlocked through DLC. So we didn't have time to make the Pokemon. Oh, just kidding, we did. They're behind a paywall. And the thing about the DLC that's unique to it is that the entire, both areas, the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra, so it seems are both free roaming camera or free motion camera, so you can move it around, kind of like the wild area was. Which goes to show that this was something they were capable of doing, but they held it back for DLC. And so I'm really torn on this because if it's great, then it shows that Sword and Shield could have been great, but they held it back to charge you more. But if it sucks, it's a $90 letdown for Sword and Shield plus DLC. So it's a kind of a lose-lose here. I'm looking forward to having more Pokemon in the game, of course, but again, it's like this buying one game or buying both games in the DLC, that's $180. Two $60 games and two $30 DLCs. Like $180. You could buy Sun Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon for 120 or 160. So it's like even if this was their web gaming pass, buy the new game for full price, but it still is more expensive than buying 4 3DS games. So I like the idea of this, but I would rather they release a full game at launch because there was no post game, but for basically an hour of 5 maybe Dynamax battles, a legendary battle, and then 2 hop fights. So they definitely were holding back to then launch DLC.
So, as kind of an outsider with Pokemon, myself, I did finish Pokemon Shield over the holiday, which I can talk about in another video or maybe even later in this discussion. Just overall impressions, I didn't love it, and I felt like you were saying that it's missing a lot of content. I think that this is an interesting strategy, and it kind of speaks a lot to maybe the development of Pokemon Sword and Shield. So the wild area in itself is an experiment. Game Freak has never done anything like it before, and going through it, it's hard to go through the wild area and not feel like there should be more to do. Like it genuinely feels like there should be more to do. Like, well, okay, you have raid battles, you can catch Pokemon. That's literally it. I mean, of course, there's like small things, but that's literally it. So what's going to be interesting, I think, about this DLC, since it's all wild area esque, I think what Game Freak is trying to do is lay a foundation for what the next entry in the series could be, assuming it's not a remake. And so that this is their chance to kind of experiment and go wild. But pun intended, by the way. But my concerns there are that, at least from everything we know so far, like it doesn't look like it's going to be all that content rich. Like it's just going to be running back and forth from place to place. I honestly don't think that whatever story there is in it, whatever like mainline kind of campaign progression, isn't going to be that long. I think what they're expecting you to get out of this DLC is just all the Pokemon that they're adding into the game.
That's what I'm worried about. Because what we saw in
That's
the game, it's like in this island you have this dojo, in the next island you have this tour guide, and so I'm worried it's going to be you do kind of the post game in Sword and Shield, which you didn't do the post game because you didn't like the game.
no, yeah.
I did it for both Sword and Shield. The post game is basically an hour of go here, have this battle, go there, have that battle, and then just rinse and repeat generic text. Because the thing is, none of the characters are good, none of the areas are interesting, and you're just going basically an hour slog of a fetch quest. I'm worried that that's what it's going to be. It's like if you want to speed run the DLC, I'm worried it's going to be basically an hour each. And then on top of that, you have all the new Pokemon you can go and get. And so that's what I'm worried about, is that this is going to be an excuse to have 2 new wild areas when the story and everything surrounding both of these islands is just going to be another like slog, boring attempt to have some story in these new Pokemon games.
One more thing I do want to say, because I do want to be fair. What's kind of ironic about my experience with Pokemon is that one of the fun things is supposed to be catching. I don't think catching is very fun. Just personally, that's just not. I don't have the time for it, and the game with all the animation. Well, you know what I mean by all the animations, with all the cutscenes and stuff you have to watch, doing battles and throwing Pokeballs and all that. I just think it's a big waste of time for someone who has actual things to do. I understand that a large number of Pokemon players, that's one of the big appeals for them, is catching Pokemon. So, maybe this DLC is worth its $30 value. So I don't want to completely discredit it. But for me personally, I'm someone who, if I play an RPG, I want to enjoy a story and good characters. If I don't get that, I'm going to be disappointed, and I'm going to feel like I wasted $30. I just want to get to the point that this channel can be a tax write-off, so that whenever I spend money on a product that I don't really want, I can just write it off and not be taxed on it. Okay, speaking of delays, there's that's my transition practice. I don't want to talk about Pokemon anymore. Did you have any more thoughts before we move on?
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
So this 2020 is the year of delays. So we've been promised a lot, especially in March. So Doom Eternal got delayed until March. We've already known that. It's sitting there with Animal Crossing. Well, Final Fantasy Remake was supposed to come out in March as well. That got delayed to April 3rd. So the Final Fantasy Twitter tweeted out saying that they want a couple more weeks to polish up the game. I believe it's like 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks that they wanted to polish up the game. Which again, delays are generally always a good thing, as long as there's a solid date for it to release. But this is very controversial because people really want Final Fantasy VII, because it's just basically Square announced it way further in advance than they should have, and so it's created this hype. And hype is a bit dangerous sometimes when it comes to fan bases. So people just really want this game. It's coming. Don't worry. Polish is a good thing, but I hope this. I don't know. It is a little worrying considering how close out they were, and that they only delayed it by like 4 or 5 weeks or something like that. Whereas you take a look at Cyberpunk 2077, which just got delayed from April 16th to September 17th, a whole 5 months, with CD Projekt Red saying that they want more time for polish, because they create very, very polished games, polished games. That makes sense, having a whole 5 months, but having a couple weeks is kind of weird, especially so close to its release date in the first place with Final Fantasy VII. But again, I don't know about you, but I always stand by delays being good. I'm a patient person in that regard, because I'd rather have a great game than a decent game. So what else here? Iron Man for PSVR got delayed to May 15th. So for the 5 people that have PSVR, sorry. Actually, PSVR, quick side note, actually sold very well for VR. I think it sold like 3 to 5 million units, something like that. I have to look that up again. Avengers, you called this one.
I did,
you?
yeah.
Yeah. That got delayed to September 4th. I don't really have any affinity towards that. So
I think they definitely, I'm not sure if they're going to rework it or not, but once it kind of leaked that the game is not really about them, but Ms. Marvel instead, I think people were like, really? You lured us in with the trailer of like, okay, here's the Avengers from the MCU. And then it turned out, yeah, just kidding. They were a backdrop for a story about Ms. Marvel. Like, I'd rather have a game about her and do that than call it Avengers and have them be a background. And so I
Right.
think that, I'm not sure if they're going to rework the story or not, but also, too, the game, when we last saw it, we saw like, 12 seconds of gameplay with a lot of CGI scenes.
Yeah.
We haven't seen
Pretty
much about
much.
it at all. So I call this being delayed because it was a few months out. We hadn't seen anything. And I still hold Gods and Monsters coming out next month is going to be delayed. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that will get delayed.
I do tend to think delays are generally good things because I'd rather see a game get pushed and be good than have a Sword and Shield where it comes out and you can tell this was made with no love or care. This was just put out. We can't push it because we got to launch with the TV show and you got to launch with the cards and launch with all this stuff. I would rather see the game like Metroid Prime 4. Like, hey, we didn't like where it was at. We're going to delay it and work it and put it out on our time. Then say, you know what, we didn't like where it was at, but let's put it out, make some money, and do better next time.
It's very good business practice to a degree. It's very socially responsible business practice. I'm sure investors don't like it. In fact, as far as Cyberpunk 2077 goes, the CD Projekt Red executive actually had to tell investors because they were asking if they were going to put developers on quote unquote crunch time until the game released, and he said more or less yes, which that can be bad for employees because I mean crunch time is never that great, especially for 5 months out of the year, pushing your employees to do way above and beyond. That can just get very exhausting. But also investors don't like uncertainty, and whenever they see a date get pushed back for something like this, whenever it's been planned to release for a long time, then that causes some uncertainty. So one more delay that actually just got delayed today. We are recording on the 20th. Dying Light 2. Apparently that was coming out this year. It was delayed from spring 2020 to indefinitely. So will it get stuck in development hell for 3 years? Say that again.
That was a great word to hear. You hear delays indefinitely, like
indefinitely. It's indefinitely. I'm gonna assume means it's in development hell. So we'll see that in maybe 3 or 4 years. It'll pop up eventually. But as far as delays go, again, polish is super important. And, the first product this year that's going to benefit from a delay is Doom Eternal, like I mentioned. And I'm so looking forward to that because I just finished Doom, which I'm going to talk about in my Press Y. But, polish is good. Oh, I don't really want to talk about the next story.
Should I take it?
Because if we're talking about things, I was just talking about something that's going to be polished, and this is not polished. So...
Okay, so
go on ahead.
Little Town Hero is getting a physical collector's release. They're going to put out Little Town Hero with a bundle and stickers and a book and a CD, all this stuff, for $50 in the spring of this year. I don't know that one person, even people who made this game, were asking for this, but they're going to sell this for twice the price the game originally launched at digitally, and people who are going to buy this because they are suckers for physical releases, not necessarily the game. But yeah, Little Town Hero, which dropped off the map the day it launched, is coming back this year for a resurgence, apparently. So keep your eyes peeled, boys and girls. Little Town Hero is coming for you.
Something interesting about this I just thought about. Games just completely ignoring their quality can become very valuable if they don't sell a lot or if there's not many copies sold. So, for example, Hello Kitty Cruisers for Wii U. Me and Emerson were literally talking about this the other day. It's like $10 on the Switch, but to get it on the Wii U, a used copy is like $70 or something like that on eBay. I wonder if this is going to be valuable in the future.
It may turn out to be that because no one's going to buy this initially.
And it's Game Freak. That's the other thing.
Yes. So on the Freak.
I don't really want to go for investing as far as like just guessing if something's going to be rare and buying it like I did with Katamari Damacy reroll.
Yeah, now it's worth like $12.
Now it's worth $12. But I am kind of a sucker for physical releases. I'm one of those people you mentioned. So Oh,
Actually,
speaking of, go
real
ahead.
quick, I'm a
Yeah.
sucker for physical releases as well. I still have not bought Cuphead because they promised a physical release was coming, and I'm still waiting for it. I'm still waiting for that physical release of Cuphead because I'm not going to buy digital. I hate doing that, and then they put a physical one out there, and it's like, damn it, I need that box, and so I want that box so bad, but I'm not buying an empty one to put my own art in there. I am going to wait for that physical release that they promised was going to come.
Yeah, we'll need to look up and see if there's any update on that
There's
because
been
that's one of
no news ever. I'm still waiting.
I bet you we'll hear about it this year in the direct that's coming this week, guys. I promise it's coming this week. Anyway, speaking of things that we're speculating about, there was a reference by the Chinese regional president for HTC Vive. His name is Alvin Graylin. He made a reference to Left 4 Dead 3. So it was during a conference he was presenting at, and he was talking about games in VR that are gonna quote drive consumer and AAA studio interest. And he mentioned Half-Life Alyx, and then mentioned Left 4 Dead 3 right after that. So two things. One, it's likely that this was just, I mean, he said on Twitter that it was his own speculation. So it likely is speculation. But someone in his position will most likely know about games like Left 4 Dead 3 if they do exist, because most likely, since VR is such a new technology, even though it's been out for a while, Valve is likely consulting with HTC as well as Oculus and all those other companies to make sure that their games are compliant and seeing what they're going to be doing in the future with hardware, and so that they can develop games with those kinds of features in mind. So again, we're not big on rumors, and we're going to get to that because we have some thoughts about rumors.
Yes, we
But
do.
this is very interesting to speculate on his speculation. So don't get your hopes up if we don't see Left 4 Dead 3, but I wouldn't be surprised depending on how well Half-Life Alyx ends up working for Valve. But who knows? Half-Life Alyx could tank, and they could still make Left 4 Dead 3 just because Valve seems so committed to VR. So it could be just investment funds for them.
Next topic
But
now.
oh, fine. God, Epic. What this is pretty epic. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, but Epic Games is continuing to distribute free games through the Epic Games Store throughout 2020. So this has been, if you haven't known about this, and I've been talking about it on like almost every single podcast, what game is free currently on the Epic Game Store. But if you haven't been taking advantage of this, shame on you. So far, 73 games have been distributed over the past couple years, I think maybe a year and a half, something like that. And you're a sucker if you're not taking advantage of these games. Like if I go look on my Epic Games library, I think I have about 20 of the free games. And even over the holidays, they were doing like one game every couple days, I believe it was. There was every week, I can't remember, but it was like rapid fire. But I mean, I've gotten games like Celeste, Jackbox Party Pack, Alan Wake, the Batman Arkham trilogy, all of those just free. Lego Batman. But there's like high quality games that they're throwing in there. Oh, Rayman Legends was another one I got for free.
That's a really good
Which is
game.
great. Yes, that's what I've heard. So continue. Good for Epic Game Store. I know people give them a lot of hate, and I don't understand why. That's a whole nother discussion. But this is a good differentiating thing that they can do to draw people into their ecosystem and away from Steam, at least for 5 minutes, because everyone's just going to result back to Steam. Let's be real. But Emerson, I'm going to let you do this one because it involves the F word.
Yes, the F word being Fire Emblem Heroes. They're just Fire Emblem. So we saw this week the reveal for the fifth Smash character in the DLC Fighters Pass. And so it was Byleth. And I told you the day before, I want Byleth in Smash just so we can have Edge of Dawn, the song. And I was so happy. I got up in the morning, I put my computer up, and I see I think chapter 12, the cutscene from that game was like, this is Fire Emblem Three Houses. I know that scene. I was happy about this. But Byleth was revealed. There was a lot of controversy, but Byleth has 4 weapons because they make a whole too many sword fighters joke. And he has the Sword of the Creator. He has the spear, the axe, and the bow. Fail Not's the bow. I can't remember the other 2, but anyway, he has the 4 heroes relics to change up his gameplay style. And so each direction corresponds with the weapon. So down would be the axe, forward and backward would be the spear, and neutral would be your bow. And so it's kind of an interesting playstyle. It kind of feels more like Corrin, and it does have the male and female variants, male and female Byleth, and then the skins for, or the alts for Dimitri, for Claude, for Sothis, and for Edelgard. And then it has just the later game skin as well. No spoilers, but about a third of the ratings on the Nintendo reveal trailer are dislikes. Last I saw, it was like 140,000 likes to 70,000 dislikes. So 2/3 liked it, a third didn't. There was a whole backlash about too many sword fighters, too many Fire Emblem characters in Smash. And this was your point, and I agree with it. It was as long as the character's fun, I don't care.
And can I add something to
Yeah,
that
go
real quick?
for it.
Because that is a point I put down. So I'm thinking about characters I don't care about at all as far as like franchises and relevance. So like someone like Game and Watch, someone like Rob, like all those. Well, I'm not gonna talk about Rob because I don't like playing Rob. But let's just take like Game and Watch, and even a lot of the Fire Emblem characters for me, they're super fun to play. I don't like necessarily love those series, even though I am playing Three Houses right now. I don't necessarily love those series, but they're still really fun characters. So continue.
Okay, so my thing is, most of the characters I play is like I'm not a big fan of their character, but again, it's like for the my whole philosophy with DLC releases is I don't think I've liked one of them so far, and it's like I mean I don't have an issue with that. It's like I like to play Joker; he's definitely a fun character. I have no attachment to Joker, to Banjo Kazooie, to Hero, or to Terry at all. And it's like I like playing a couple of them. I don't like any of them as their characters at all. I've never played any of their games. But the thing is, people are happy about each character, and so I'm happy for them. And so I think it's funny seeing people saying like, "Oh, this isn't the sword fighter I wanted. I'd rather have a different sword fighter like Sora or Dante." Like, okay, we've got 6 more coming. They announced a new deal or Fighters Pass with 6 characters, and also too this all the roster for the 5 Fighters Pass, the first one, were confirmed, or they were, I guess, locked in November 2018. So it's not like there was this whole press moving forward. Who they're going to do? They knew then. And we knew Sakurai played an advanced copy of the game as well. That was news back in the day that he played an advanced copy and liked the game. And so, if anything,
Emerson. Yeah. On just a quick note on that point, it was kind of implied in the presentation that they wanted Byleth in the original roster.
Yeah, same with Rex and Pyra or Xenoblade. But yeah, I think too with this, given the 4 of the 5 DLC were third party, looking at last year, 2019 as a whole, what franchise has new characters that can be represented in Smash? Because Smash is the celebration of gaming, but above all else, the celebration of Nintendo. And so looking at last year, like what franchise adds new characters besides Pokemon and Fire Emblem? We had Xenoblade, but I think that wasn't well enough established or known to be in Smash. I think it's more likely now they'll be in the next roster, just given the fact that 2 sold so well. And we have a new game coming out for the series as well, being the XC Definitive Edition. But I have no issue at all with Byleth being in Smash. And it's like, again, if it was someone like Dante or Sora, who I have no attachment to other than not liking the Kingdom Hearts fan base, friends I've known, other than I'd be happy people got their characters in the game. If they're fun, I'll play them, like with Joker. I have no attachment to Persona at all. I love playing Joker. He's a fun character. Terry can be really fun, although I don't care at all about his franchise. So I think it's one thing of people overreacting and being salty that their character wasn't in Smash. Although I love sitting back and watching everyone be so upset that it wasn't Sora. And I love people who spend years on the leaks and the rumors just get shot down. That makes me happy.
And I think we're, speaking of leaks and rumors, I kind of want to roll this. I know it's not next in our script, but I do kind of want to talk about rumors in general.
Do it.
Because me and Emerson had this discussion the other day. I think rumors can be a good thing and a very, very toxic thing, but generally a very, very toxic thing. So I want to start with the good, and they're only good whenever a company specifically and very intentionally leaks out game information or just information about an upcoming product or something. There are reports that Activision has done this in the past with like Call of Duty and stuff, but it's hard to nail down very, very specific situations, because of course they don't want you to know that they're leaking out that info, because what accurate leaks do and accurate rumors do is they build hype towards something because it gets community interest and community hype. And then whenever it's announced, expectations are met. The thing about Nintendo is genuine leaks are maybe one out of every, let's say, 7 or 8.
100.
Very, yeah. Even still, they're very, very rare. So this past week we had Sabi on Twitter talk about, and keep in mind Sabi is the guy who accurately leaked Nintendo's E3, and he even got a cease and desist from Nintendo, apparently. But he leaked that Paper Mario, a new Paper Mario is coming out this year, as well as a new 2D Metroid, with the Paper Mario returning to its original gameplay style, and then Metroid being a sequel to Fusion. While he is a quote credible leaker, it's very irresponsible to get your hopes up on this. And I think if he's being malicious in this and using his position of authority, being that he accurately guessed or was truly given the information for Nintendo's E3, which is probably the latter, considering he got a cease and desist, I still don't like the practice, because one, it's not what Nintendo wants. They don't want hype being built up, even if it's true. They don't want that hype being built up unless that's an intentional strategy. And two, if it's wrong, it's hype being built up in the wrong places. If you're messing around with this is gonna sound so dumb, but the Paper Mario fandom, that's kind of dangerous. Like, I mean, I love Paper Mario, and I'd be pretty disappointed if this rumor isn't true. But those people are very, very militant about their series and wanting it to be like wanting the next entry to be like the first 2 games. So if that doesn't happen, then people are going to be really, really disappointed. And furthermore, any other games that Nintendo announces will just be immediately compared to what could have been announced via a leak. So someone could say, a new Paper Mario is coming out, a new Metroid, a new Pikmin, a new Super Mario 3D World getting ported, like all those kinds of things. People are going to set their expectations that stuff's going to happen, and it may not happen. In all likelihood, it won't happen. And then it kind of overshadows whatever Nintendo or whatever company announces. So I think leaks can be a good thing if they're used as an intentional business strategy. But as far as like communities go, yeah, it sparks discussion, but it ultimately just leads to disappointment and, people downvoting reveals for other things.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. But also, too, it's funny how a lot of leaks contradict each other. We saw earlier this month, there's a Metroid leak. There are 2 games coming this year, apparently. A new 3D one and a 2D, a remake, though, of Super Metroid. And it's like, but then we have a new Metroid leak saying, nope, it's a sequel to Fusion, the GBA game, but it's still 2D. And again, the thing with the leaks, too, is there's people always leak what the thing people want. Like, you never hear a leak often for, this is coming out, it's going to be Paper Mario, a sequel to Color Splash. Like, it's always, okay, it's going to be a back to 1,000 Year Door. It's going to be this game. It's going to be this character we all want for Smash, or that most people want for Smash, apparently. It's going to be this huge crossover. It's going to be this ridiculous thing. Because the leaks are meant to be big. Because people want to have the clicks. They want to have the engagement, and they want to have the credibility to say, okay, well, we call a couple things right, or we are given this information. We're going to go ahead and put it out. And I do agree with you, having leaks come out ahead of time, because studios and companies, they want to put information out when they want it out. They put it out to then build hype in their given time. You want to make sure you have a hype for a game for this long. You want this information at points A, B, and C before the release window. You want to kind of measure and plan out when information comes out and the hype comes out, to then make sure you're best doing the game, rather than having hype come out way too early, then it dies down before the game. I think, again, I'm also on the I don't like leaks or rumors, because more often than not, like, I think I kind of won you over a little bit to this side, is like a lot of them are fake. A lot of them are like, okay, they're partially credible. However, it turns out they got this one thing right. We look at their past and there's like 1,000 strikes. Like, okay, great. A broken clock is right twice a day. And even with leaks, even if they are real, I would rather just sit down and like, same thing with the Sword and Shield, like the Dex leak. Turns out a few of those are actually fake. But you had some information that was correct. And so I'd rather sit down and just have the feel of the first party, or have them announce, here's what the game is, or experience it for yourself, than go in knowing here's everything about the game, here's the big character reveal. Because like, if I knew going in the reveal's Byleth, what am I going to watch? I'm not going to have the hype watching for it. Or same thing with if you knew Banjo-Kazooie was coming, the reveal in that trailer is nowhere near as good. And so I like to just kind of be, I guess it sounds bad, I like to kind of be following the corporate plan or the agenda, I guess. I like to kind of experience it naturally. Then spend it, we saw it was like 130 something days since the last Smash character was announced before Byleth. I can't imagine spending 100 plus days like having hype for a character and having all this stuff and it's credible. It's going to be Dante. There's an announcement about Devil May Cry coming out on the same day. It's going to be Dante. You have this whole hype building up forever, and it's not that. I think all it does is breed unrealistic expectations. Because even if it is something similar to what you want, the reality is never going to be as beautiful as the fiction, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes it is, but in a completely different way as well.
Yeah.
But again, your disappointment kind of can overshadow that. But I think we've kind of said like our full thoughts on leaks and all that. So I do want to move on. So Fire Emblem Three Houses.
The Cindered Shadows.
I had to say the F word. The final wave of DLC is coming out on February 13th. So right before Valentine's Day for all you incels.
As support 4 new playable characters.
Yeah. So the abyss underneath
Garreg Mach
finally gets explored.
Yeah.
4 new playable characters.
New paralogs, new items, and a couple other... I wonder if it's going to be a new whole storyline or just kind of a few offshoots during the calendar month. But you can't say you're playing Three Houses. You haven't even beat the paralog yet. Come on, Gunnar.
No, I did beat the prologue.
You haven't even started chapter 1 yet. You're not playing Three Houses. You played the prologue, and then you put the game down.
Yeah, because I got busy. Well, I'm going to play it later tonight. There
Okay.
But yeah, for all you incels, it's on February 13th. Go get your waifus. You'll have them for Friday.
Only 2 waifus. 2 are husbandos.
Oh, ooh, gross. Okay. This next story, Emerson, I'm gonna put that towards the end, so we can kind of knock through because that's gonna be a pretty.
We only have we got one more topic. We have our most anticipated games of 2020, possibly.
No. Yeah. And Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition.
The next one we have
May have a release date.
Ooh,
it may.
Speaking of leaks and rumors.
Yeah, for real. We have to report on this because they have been correct before. So Danish retailer Cool Shop has, which is a terrible name for a store. Hey kids, where are you going to go? Cool Shop. All right. It has definitive edition pegged for May 29th, 2020. So me and Emerson on our own, we've been speculating just on our own about when we think the game's going to get released because we still don't know Nintendo's lineup for this year. But May or August have been the two dates that we've thrown back and forth. I've heavily leaned towards May. I've been thinking it's going to come out early this year because it makes sense if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out later this year. But that's a whole nother discussion. But I'd rather be patient and just find out. So yeah, this is talking about anticipated games for 2020. Mm-hmm. Our most anticipated games. This is
my number one.
This is my number one as well. So this is my number one. I'm going to take the spotlight from you. It's my number one, followed by Doom Eternal, followed by Cyberpunk, followed by P5 Scramble. I'm looking forward to P5 Royal as well, but I'm not super hyped for it because it's like 99 hours. But P5 Scramble just looks fun without having to level up a character or like play traditional RPG level up characters. I don't hate RPGs. It's just not my favorite kind of combat style, but. Those what is it? 4 are my those are my most looking forward to this year as far as stuff we know is actually coming out.
My top 3 for this year are number 1 is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I love the first game. I've played 2, Torna, and just finished Cross. So I've started playing 1 again on the 3DS. And the week I started playing it again, I put like 10 hours in. The week I started playing it, they announced Definitive Edition for Switch. And so I'm like 10, 15 hours maybe I put into that game. And so I'm going to sit back and keep waiting for that game to come out on the Switch. I played the Wii one, That was good, but it looks so much better on Switch from what we've seen. Like their eyes have life, and they're not just painted on their face. That's so nice. Number one, Xenoblade. Number two for me, it's coming out in a couple weeks. It is the Mega Man Zero slash ZX Legacy Collection. I know I will love 5 of the 6 games. The Zero series is great, and half of the ZX series is great. The ZX Advent is my favorite standalone Mega Man game. I prefer the Zero or the X series as a whole. But still, these games are great. I'm looking forward to seeing them in HD on a Switch screen rather than a DS or a Game Boy. And I'm really looking forward to having my hands on the Legacy Collection. And then the third one I'm looking forward to the most is Tales of Arise. It got rated in South Korea recently, so hopefully it's going to get a date soon. The Tales of series really interests me. I haven't played any of them, but I have like 5 of the games. I'll get to them eventually. Don't worry about it. But I saw a couple scenes from Tales of Arise, and it looks great. I'm going to give an honorable mention, though, to Battle for Bikini Bottom.
Oh yes, I forgot. Oh, shoot, I didn't mention that too. That is a big honorable mention for me. That's one of my favorite games as a kid that I had on GameCube.
I had a PS2, but that was the game.
The inferior version. Yeah, it
Indeed.
was so much fun. Like it's a genuinely solid platformer, and it's funny because it's a licensed like just game. It's just a stupid old licensed game because I mean those games used to get pumped out all the time, but like they had some pretty decent ones. I'd say Battle for Bikini Bottom was probably one of the best of the licensed games during the early 2000s era. So
Right.
I feel like there was one more game that I was missing. No, I mentioned Doom Eternal already. I'm really looking
Yeah.
forward to Doom Eternal. That one's I just played through Doom 2016, which I'll again talk about in my press Y. And this just looks like there's so much more refinement to it. It looks so fun. All right.
We're doing Microsoft. We're doing Press Y. The
I think
Evergreen.
I'll try to shorten
Okay.
the whole evergreen strategy. Okay, so Microsoft they announced recently, I think within the past 2 weeks, that their console strategy for the Series X, their next console, they are not taking a traditional approach, meaning instead of it being its own, hardware exclusive generation, games from Microsoft as well as third party developers are going to be working. They'll work across the entire Xbox series of consoles, as far as Xbox One, Xbox One X, and the Series X. So it's like a 3-tier console approach. So in the same vein as an Apple iPhone. So I can play, let's take Fortnite. I can play Fortnite on my iPhone XS, but it's not going to play as well as someone who has an iPhone 11, but it will still play better than someone who has an iPhone 7, right? So Microsoft is trying to take this approach with their console ecosystem, rather than being a hardware generation restricted. It's going to be like ecosystem and name platform restricted, meaning like just the Xbox platform. So all Microsoft games will work on the base Xbox One, but they'll still work on the Series X and look really, really good on the Series X. So I think that this is a very interesting strategy. It really differentiates Microsoft with the Xbox brand from PlayStation and Nintendo, because it seems right now that Sony is just taking the traditional approach, and Nintendo just kind of does what it wants to do. So I mean, they're kind of the wild card there anyway. But I think that this is very, very interesting. This is going to be an industry-shaking approach to things, and it kind of makes sense because we are hitting the point where, games are looking really, really, really good. Again, I mentioned earlier, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted 4, those PlayStation 4 exclusives. Even though they're only running at 1080p, 30 frames a second, they still look like super high-quality games.
Spider-Man too.
But Spider-Man, oh yeah, Spider-Man. How could I forget? Like all of those, and even Shadow of the Colossus remake, they all look fantastic, like such good. And there's always room for improvement, especially with features like ray tracing coming up. But I mean, ray tracing is pretty much the only big step forward outside of current further advancements in like skin and facial features and facial animation and just animation in general, that I think games really need to that the games are continually working on. So I'm very curious how this new business strategy is going to work for them. I think a singular ecosystem where every console can run mostly every game and not having any exclusives for their new console is a very interesting strategy. And I think that Microsoft is they're treading on waters that nobody has particularly treaded on so far. So I'm also very curious of whether or not they're going to rely on Game Pass and the convenience of getting games through Game Pass and through Microsoft's ecosystem as a selling point, or if they'll take all the studios that they've bought out and actually produce games and not just pull a Rare and buy it for $300 million or whatever they bought it for, and then make them do shovelware games. So it's going to be interesting because if they can really compete with Sony as far as games go to bring people over to their ecosystem, that'd be very cool and better for consumers ultimately, because they get more art, more things to consume. But they'll always be competing with Game Pass, but I don't know how big of a selling point that really is.
It's going to have to be huge because this is dangerous.
It has to be.
It's going to have to be huge with Game Pass because you got to sell it on that and say, like, we can just get this $20 a month and get a bunch of games. Whereas the PS5, even though it's going to have exclusive Spider-Man 2, it's going to have Horizon Zero Dawn 2 and all these things that are only on there. Well, you can play things cheaper on here. Because, like, the Xbox One X, if there's nothing to bring you over other than, like, cost, that's dangerous. Because, like, if you say, like, okay, all of our games, you can buy an Xbox One S for $150, like the all digital edition. Buy that and then get Game Pass, and it'll all work on there. Or spend $500, $600 on the Series X, and then buy the games for there. It's hard to. This is very like it's new water, but this could be dangerous for them. We're going to not exclusive for the first couple years because if you're going to go to PS5, if it's something you do for the exclusive games, like a God of War 2 or Spider-Man PS4 2 or whatever it's going to be. Because they have those games only on PS5, whereas this you could get a cheaper console and play the same game.
Right, and I think I really want to speculate and say that Microsoft knows this now. I mean, it's fairly clear that they lost this generation by a couple laps.
By a landslide.
It was bad, like very, very bad. Like they don't even release full numbers for Xbox One consoles being sold. So. I think what Microsoft is doing here is they've really taken a look at this generation and also taken a look into the future and see how they can captivate consumer markets in a different way. So I think that Microsoft is definitely going to be investing in this heavily, and I just hope that games are a big part of their strategy. Which I mean, they're implying that they are, considering that they're buying out studios, but their history of buying out studios hasn't always panned out. But again, this is something very new for them. So, something else new for them could be actually utilizing the studios that they purchased.
That's a power move, buying Rare than forcing them to do shovelware. Like that's how you exert your power and your authority.
It's like, hey, you're the guys that made Banjo-Kazooie. All right, make some games for Kinect. Thanks.
And don't come back till you finished.
Yes. So I think this is going to be interesting, though, and also if it works out and it's really good for consumers, where they can buy one console and they don't have to know that it's just going to die in 6 years, basically, that it can last a long, long time. I think this is really good for consumers as well, and maybe Nintendo and Sony will start following it. But do you have any other thoughts before we move on to our Press Y?
Not really, no. I think this is something I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. But I think when you're behind, basically you lost the generation by a significant margin. It's not the time to be playing with that. I think it's a Hail Mary, but this could be an absolute failure. We'll have to wait and see. But this could be either a huge success or they're already behind the 8 ball. Then they just fell over and broke their neck. So we will see.
We'll see. We will see. All right, you want to lead us into Press Y?
Sure. So my Press Y, I've got 2 for this week. One of which is I call the delay of game. It's good to see games getting pushed back. Like I'm actually a fan of seeing products being given the time and care they need to release as a better product, even if the window they're going to release in is potentially less lucrative. Like you're seeing Cyberpunk go from March to September, which is generally a slow month. But it's March is kind of building up into the summer season. You have a lot of big releases in March. But I think it's good to see a game come out or be pushed into a potentially worse release window to be given the care and love it needs to succeed. have the game complete at launch. I'd much rather see a quality game, hopefully Metroid Prime 4, but seeing something get delayed for quality assurance reasons that's comforting than rather than seeing something release like a Sword and Shield, which just feels unfinished, and you can tell they were either potentially holding back for the DLC or that they just want to get it out in time for the anime and the cards, and then they're gonna actually put work into it and fix it in post. I love that seeing games given the time they need to succeed. Whether they come out, they're pegged for a date, they come out on that date, or if the game comes out and they say, hey, we need a couple more weeks, a couple more months, we're not quite where we want it to be. I think that shows confidence and also shows like they care about the consumer. And my second thing is I'm happy to see Byleth in Smash, even just for the new music, because the music in Three Houses is awesome.
Very, very
It's
cool.
the first
Anything
character
else?
I've enjoyed for the DLC pack, at least in terms of the series they're from and the character themselves. So I'm actually happy to get one person in the pack I like, or in the DLC I paid for, that I've enjoyed.
I'm just looking forward to doing
The up B.
the down B, where
Oh,
it's the warlock punch. It has the super arm or the whatever armor
yeah.
on it, but it's like a warlock punch with the sword.
It's an axe, actually. But actually,
or an
I'm looking
axe,
forward to
yeah.
the up B for the spike.
Oh, that's so sick too. That's so sick. It like ruins people who like try to go for stage spikes.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, any more press fire? Are you good?
I'm good. Go for it.
All right. So, oof. All right. So this week for Press Y, I had a couple things as well. I want to start by talking about the test of time with games. So this is something I was discussing with Emerson yesterday when I was heading back to heading back to university.
Timestamp, bleep that.
What timestamp? 56. All right, that's gonna get bleeped. Anyway, so if you play an old game, especially with the NES era games, you'll likely take away from your likely reaction to the game will be, wow, this game's a piece of crap. Well, it's not that the game itself, like in its own era, the game is great, right? But the test of time references a constantly evolving standard of quality that people have as far as games and movies or any kind of media, as far as all that goes. So with games, things like slippery controls or imprecise controls, potentially the art style associated with graphics, a lot of those things can really hurt a game over time. So take something like Mario 64. If you play Mario 64, it still holds up today fairly well, but you play that and the controls feel super slippery compared to something like Super Mario Odyssey, which is super tight and super fluid. So there's, but it still, so it doesn't hold up the test of time all that well, but it still does in its own rights. Being that the level design is pretty good and the platforming is still pretty good despite some of the slipperiness. And then you take a game like Wind Waker, where the art style on the GameCube still holds up to this day. Not completely ignoring the re-release on Wii U, like it still holds up to this day. But then you take the section where you have to collect the 8 shards of the Triforce, or the Triforce of Wisdom. Where that section that got radically changed in the remake version, because that part didn't hold up the test of time. And so that leads kind of into my next point, kind of reference there, is remakes and remasters often fix these issues and really emphasize how great some old games can really be. But that topic was inspired by my playthrough of Super Metroid over the break. I actually just finished this weekend. I finally just knocked it out and wanted to finish it. I didn't really enjoy the game. I see how people really like it. There's a great game underlying with the exploration and all that. But I was looking at the Samus Returns remake on 3DS and seeing like the scan pulse and all the convenience features added, as well as the controls that look really tight but also fluid. In Super Metroid, the controls are very tight, but they're not fluid. They're very precise, but that leads to a lot of frustration in the game. At least it did for me. And I see why it's a good game, but I personally didn't enjoy it all that much. But I feel like if someone did if Nintendo did a remake of Super Metroid at some point in the vein of Samus Returns, it would just be incredible. But I think that that's just an interesting topic. Because if a game survives the test of time, it's very, very, very subjective. Just like any review of any game is very subjective. So is whether or not it stands the test of time. But I do feel that there's a few objective factors that can be considered in whether or not a game truly does. And so I'm going to wrap up with that. But I do want to mention, because I was talking about Doom, I did play Doom over the break. That's what I'm also pressing Y for. Because holy crap, that was fun. Doom 2016, not the old one, but Doom 2016. I got it for the Switch. I had it on PC for the longest time, but I really wanted to play it on the Switch just because it's so cool that they were able to port it to the Switch. So I played it on over the break. It took me about maybe 8 to 10 hours, something like that. I'd have to look. But it is awesome. It's. I was telling Emerson, like I've played a lot of good games like this last year, like Luigi's Mansion and some other really good games. And I had a lot of fun with those games, but Doom is like one of the most exhilarating and fun games that I've played since probably Mario Odyssey. Mario Odyssey I had such a good time with, but it's like I had that same feeling, but in very different ways because it's obviously a very different game. And it feels, if Nintendo was to make like a very gritty, I'm not going to say gritty, that's not the right word, a very gory shooter.
Shadow the Hedgehog 2.
No, if they were to make a very gory shooter, I feel like this Doom would be that game, because it just some of the game design as well as just the overall quality of it just kind of feels Nintendo-ish. But that's a whole nother discussion. I really enjoyed the game, and I highly recommend y'all go play it before Doom Eternal comes out this year, because it was just so much fun. So
if
much
it does
fun.
come out this year.
It'll come out. It will. But
only time will tell.
I guess so. Anything else?
Not really, no.
Bro, we hit over an hour.
Yes, we did.
We hit way over an hour. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd say we're done.
And only one timestamp. It's our first one in the series, too, I think, right?
Yes, I have to bleep the place.
We have our first timestamp. I'm so happy. Yes. Now I can start yelling, timestamp Gunnar.
Yes, you should. I'm glad that you wrote it down while we were talking, too. Because I don't want people to know where I am.
I'm about to drop your whole address right now. So timestamp me. No.
It just dox me. All right. Thank y'all so much for watching the Press Y, or listening to the Press Y podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends if you have those. Because we are gamers. We are oppressed. We are incels. I'm kidding. We're not incels. But some of us are. But I will say thank you for listening. We're glad to be back. This is really fun. Emerson, anything?
I'll do you one better. Thank you guys for watching and staring at the blank PNG on your screen for over an hour. Thank you for watching and being loyal fans. Bow to your corporate overlords just like we all want you to. Don't buy into leaks or rumors unless you really want to. And do yourself a solid. Have a nice day.
Yeah. All right. Gamers out.
Gamers out.
We're not making that a thing.
Oh, yeah, we are.